Hey, here we are, Scott. Julia, here we are. Hi, everybody. We have arrived at the virtual Columbine Spiritual Center, first service that we're doing here in our interesting new environment that we have. Yeah?
An empty environment.
An empty environment. What we hear is that there's at least 50 or more people that have joined with us today, and we can feel their energy. We can really, it is an interesting time, but I'm so glad that everyone is here with us online because we can feel you in these chairs. And we're not socially distancing, we're physically distancing. That's right, because we are still connected. Yes, we are connected. So we're going to do it a little bit different today, aren't we, Scott?
We are.
What are we going to do?
We're not having any music today. That may change over the weeks to come, but we just decided, okay, today we're going to spend time in prayer, spend time in meditation, and have the usual talk, and then we'll build from there based on what we discover from today.
What I'm really grateful for is that this community that we have is such a profound community, and the emails that we've been receiving all week really about people wanting to make sure that they're doing the right thing for each other, the desire to reach out to each other. We have this new platform, Breeze, that allows people to get names and numbers and really connect in ways that we hadn't done before. And so we get to really see what kind of people we are and what an amazing community we are.
And if people have not activated with Breeze yet, can they reach out to you, Rachel?
Absolutely, Rachel at columbineunity.org. Yep. Yep, and
Good.
we'll see how much we're in the building or not, but we're still available by our emails almost every day, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Julia, do you have anything you want to add?
Sure, I just want to encourage everybody to reach out, connect with each other, make phone calls. If, our older population is somewhat vulnerable through all of this. I talked with Janet Skeen yesterday, checked in with her. Some of our other congregants I'll definitely be connecting with, and we just want to let you know how much we love you and appreciate you. You are our world.
It's a great way of putting it.
And we get to be in our pajamas when we get to enjoy your talk. So that's not so bad. All right.
All right, let's get started.
Let's get
then.
started.
Okay, if you guys get to be in your pajamas, I want to be in mine. Okay, so I want to invite you into a time of prayer with me. And what I'm thinking today, just to give you a heads up, is that we won't go into meditation after this prayer time. We'll go into my talk, and then we'll spend some extended time in meditation after that. As you take a breath and allow yourself to settle into the space that you're in, I want to remind you of all that can be going on for you. There's a lot of fear in the environment. Stuart and I just flew in from Mexico yesterday, and I was saying that you can feel the difference. There's a certain constriction here. And so we take a nice deep breath into that. There can be a lot of disappointment right now. Things that we looked forward to are being canceled, or we are self-canceling out of taking care of ourselves or others. And so take a moment to acknowledge disappointment and the impact of others' disappointment on you. And sweet, loving Spirit, as we move into this time of communing with you, we allow ourselves to quiet, to slow. We recognize that fear has the impact of tightening in on us, of causing us to constrict, of causing us to separate in a way. And so we consciously breathe and expand. We recognize that in truth, we are your living expression. That we are supported. That life is eternal. But we also recognize in this moment that we are human, and as human beings, we uniquely live on this planet. That life seems to be of a defined period with an unknown ending, and that fear can arise. In this moment, we acknowledge any fear, any disappointment, anything that's going on with us around the coronavirus. And we open to our nature as your living, loving expression. We pause and allow our attention to turn within. We recognize the impact that it has on us, how our heart responds, how there is some acknowledgement, some familiarity every time we turn within, as if we're coming home, as if we've arrived. This is the place of true support. It is from this space and this quiet that our nature arises, that guidance flows to us, that we know the truth for us in the moment. And so we open ourselves to this place now, allowing ourselves to settle and relax, allowing ourselves to be. For we recognize we are never really alone. As we allow this relaxing, this expansion to happen, we then bring into mind all those in our sphere of influence. Our families, our friends, our spiritual community, the greater Boulder community, or wherever you live. To recognize there's room for everyone. And in this presence that is our nature, we are supported, we are protected, we are loved, and we are inspired. We take our guidance here, knowing that what we're guided to do is divinely guided, and that we cannot go wrong. Spirit, for this opportunity to pause, for this opportunity to experience life and all the possibilities of life, despite the seeming limitation of the world around us. We give thanks. Thank you, God. And so it is. Amen. And I invite you to take a few deep breaths, to come back. Allow yourself to be fully here now. It's interesting when we are preparing for a talk as ministers, and it seems like the world around us is in so much turmoil. You can feel this tension, as I said, as we came back into the country. You think, what on earth am I going to talk about? So much, right, that could be addressed. But in my years of ministry, I've found that whenever we're willing to pick up any subject of truth, it's a great doorway into whatever's happening today. And so we had been planning for months now to work with, or continue our work today on the Four Agreements. This is Don Miguel Ruiz's book, published years ago, but so perfect for our theme this year, 2020 Perfect Vision, seeing with a spiritual lens. Because this book, as so many spiritual traditions tell us, reminds us that whenever we are seeing the world through our belief system, which we commonly call our ego, because our ego becomes a solid, structured sense of beliefs that then becomes the influence from which we not only see, but which we live our life, that we're not seeing clearly. Don Miguel says that life is intended to reflect back to us love and light. But when we are looking through life through this smoky mirror, we see instead life as separation and something that we need to brace ourselves for, protect ourselves from. In this time of the coronavirus, nothing could seem more true, and yet not from a spiritual standpoint. We've looked at two of the agreements so far. We started out by talking about the first agreement, which is be impeccable with your word, and the fact that we have been so programmed to be humans that we have taken on the collective book of laws, as they say in this book. And in that, and because of the shaming that happens when we don't follow those rules, those laws, we've lost track of ourselves, lost track of what's true for us. And so when it says be impeccable with your word, all they're asking to do is speak your truth in the moment. But we have to understand that for most of us, we don't know our truth in the moment. And that it's important that we pause, just as we did in the prayer this morning. Pause and begin to ask, what is my truth right now? And then we moved on to don't take things personally. We reminded you that the vast majority of anything that is said to you, whether it is positive or negative, has to do with the other person and nothing to do with you. And so if you're taking it personally, then there's something to look at in you. What do you believe about yourself? Who are you in the world? What are your capacities and your qualities? And as we're willing to explore and ask ourselves those questions, then we have the opportunity to really experience the freedom to simply be ourselves. Today, we're just simply taking on the agreement not to make assumptions. Seems easy enough, right? Until we're told that the human mind, in its natural way of operations, puts things together, likes to draw conclusions, likes to fit the puzzle together. And we have an ego that thrives on knowing. Why? Because it hates the unknown. It literally hates not knowing. And so it's constantly drawing conclusions that we make split-second assumptions all the time, thousands of them a day, maybe even hundreds of thousands of them a day. We're unconscious to them. They happen all the time, and yet they influence then how we act, what we say, the attitudes that we hold. And the sad part is that the ego doesn't really care if they're true or not. It's just happy to have the knowing. And so we're walking around often believing what we've assumed. And the challenge is that we don't take the time to question it. In the book, Don Miguel offers this. Because we're afraid to ask for clarification, we make assumptions and believe we are right about the assumptions. Then we defend our assumptions and try to make someone else wrong. Do you see that in yourself? At first, I wasn't clear about this, but then just this week, a friend of mine shared a story with me that helped clarify it, and maybe that'll work for you too. He had a trip planned to visit his mother out of state for some time now. But as the coronavirus began to grow and spread, he decided in his mind that when he visited his mother this last week, about a week ago, that he was going to set her up to be able to self-quarantine for 30 days. Meaning that if the coronavirus became active and predominant in her area, that she could choose then to quarantine herself in her house for 30 days. So when he arrived, he set about doing that. And he never really asked his mother if that's something that she wanted. In his defense, she said things like, well, I guess that would be a good idea. Yeah, I can see the sense in that. But she never said that she was willing to do it. So he helped her acquire 30 days worth of food and supplies, including going to the pharmacy and getting 30 days of medication. But in the day that he was leaving, on that day, she said to him, honey, I doubt that I'm really going to do this. And he said, why? She said, I don't think I would survive locking myself in my house for 30 days. I'm a social being. Another thing you have to understand is that my friends are my age and not a single one of them has family living around here. If one of them gets sick, I'm not going to sit here in this house. I'm going to go and be of support. I'll be intelligent about it. I'll be careful. But it's not the way I'm wired. Well, my friend, of course, came back and started complaining about his mother. How could she think this way? You know, she's going to kill herself. Making her wrong. If you remember the quote, it says, then we defend our assumptions and try to make someone else wrong. Why don't we take the time to ask the questions? Why, in Don Miguel's words, are we afraid to ask the questions? And I think the answer, a big part of the answer, lies in our attachments. That we don't recognize all the things we're attached to and how much support we gain from that perceived attachment, right? Even though it's a false support. Like if we look at the example of my friend, we can assume is attached to his mother. And interestingly enough, what we're usually attached to is not necessarily our mother the way she is, but our mother the way we want her to be. At some point, you know, our mother is finally going to meet our needs the way we always wanted them to as a kid, which that ship has sailed. I mean, for one thing, we're no longer children, and our needs cannot be met in that way again. But we're unconscious to these attachments. And so he doesn't really want to know the truth. He doesn't really want to face the disappointment, the sense of loss. It can be shaky. I don't know all the different ways that his mother provides the support for him, but it's shaky to let go of our attachments initially. We're so convinced that that's what keeps us safe, that that's where our support lies. And so in then not wanting to ask the questions, not really wanting to know, what happens is that we begin to discount the other person and their needs by insisting that they conform to the way we want them to be in order that we can feel safe. You can imagine that my friend would think that he would know better than his mother around coronavirus. When in truth, he may be attached to her not dying, but she's not so attached to that in her mid-80s. So now Miguel goes on to say, it's always better to ask questions than to make an assumption, because assumptions set us up for suffering. And believe me, my friend is suffering. His ego would tell him he would suffer more if he knew the truth. But we suffer in the assumptions. I remember back in the 80s when AIDS was ramping up in Minneapolis, where I lived. And because there was a lot of not knowing around HIV and AIDS, because the government was not coming in to fund research, because hospitals were refusing to treat people, doctors were refusing to treat people, I immediately signed up to volunteer with the Minnesota AIDS Project. And I can remember my mother calling me and asking me not to, really on the verge of begging me not to. And I bring this up because what my mother couldn't see out of her fear was this was an amazing thing happening for me, that I had lived a life of tremendous fear of a secret being found out, a fear of separation, a fear of putting myself first because I didn't want to go through the shame, the rejection of people knowing that I was gay. And then I moved to Minneapolis, I came out, I found my tribe, my heart opened, I loved these people, and they started to get sick. And out of that, it became clear to me, not necessarily clear to everyone else, but clear to me that I needed to be of service. I was being of service out of something real, out of a love, out of a compassion, that there was some kind of courage. I never remember being afraid, when I lived in fear before I came out. I was transformed by coming out, and then when my friends got sick, I blossomed even more. I worked for a conservative CPA firm. I started on the speakers bureau of the AIDS Project. I was asking them, can I take time off? I want to speak for the Minnesota AIDS Project at such and such a corporation or this, and they gave it to me. You know, it was paving the way in so many ways, not only for me, but for companies and for us as a people. But my mother could only see it through the eyes of fear. She could not recognize what was breaking open for me. And you see, if she had been willing to ask questions, both of me and herself, that she could have come to understand what was happening for me. and then turned and started to ask her questions. So why would I want him to stop? And if she had said to me, wow, I really hear what's happening for you, but I'm afraid. I can feel my attachment to you living a full life. I can think of the things she could be attached to. I can feel the attachment of you living a life that I never really let myself live. And in that you can feel the space when we own, instead of demand conformity, when we own what's going on for us, when the truth of what's really behind our assumptions comes out, we free people to really have their life and have space for what Spirit is working in them and space within us to open up. Don Miguel. This is a great chapter, by the way, this one that deals with the third agreement. Don Miguel goes on in a slightly different vein, but I could again see all the assumptions in it. I wanted to tell you some of the assumptions that I thought. Let me just see if some of the assumptions would come back. Well, must not be important. I know in my mind I was starting to have this just explosion of all the different assumptions that we can be living by, underneath, supported by attachments. Don Miguel goes on to say, we assume people judge the way we judge, and this is why we have fear of being ourselves around others, because we think everyone else will judge us, victimize us, abuse us, and blame us as we do others. So even before others have a chance to reject us, we've already rejected ourselves. And so I want to point out that, again, this is laden with attachment. This is really the reason that I never came out, was I thought I would be rejected by my family and by my friends. But what's interesting is that, again, there's so much attachment that makes this true. The attachment that we want to be accepted, the attachment that we think it's our friends that give us love, that our friends that give us a sense of belonging. We don't recognize that really we bring a sense of value. We bring a sense of belonging through our willingness to be in alignment with our truth, with who we are. That it's much more, life is much more of an experience of living from the inside out than looking to the outside to make us whole. Wholeness comes from within. Now, we are human beings, and it's a balance. We all need contact. We need connection, for example. But there's a difference between looking to it for all of the source and just recognizing it's one of the pieces that we need. And so you can begin to hear, can't you, how much fear is involved with our attachments and the assumptions we make out of not being willing to ask the questions. There's an underlying fear. And fear really gets in our way. We've heard so many things about fear, right, in these last few weeks, that nothing great comes out of decisions made out of anxiety and fear. That we need to take a breath. I was looking in our Lenten book this year, fasting and feasting. If you didn't pick one up, I almost hated to bring this up because we're closed, so you're not going to be able to get one from us. But what's interesting, the format of this booklet is fascinating. On the left-hand side of the page, it talks about fasting from something. But on the right-hand side, it talks about feasting, and they're so related. So on page 10 and 11, it talks about fear. And of course, the left-hand side says fasting from fear. And this is written, by the way, by a woman named Kathleen Beasley, who's a Unity minister. Here's what she says about fear. Like a paralyzing force that stands between me and my next right step forward, fear tries to take the upper hand. My humanity reminds me of the existence of fear as a feeling. And when I focus on the fear itself, sometimes that's all I can see. There's nothing more true than this. Yes, we're human and we're impacted by fear. But if we allow fear to be our only focus, fear will be the only thing we see. We don't see the possibilities. We don't see what can come from the things that are happening in our lives, and we cut ourselves off from the guidance because we naturally constrict. There's not there's not space in fear. We need, as Stuart says to me all the time, take a breath. We need to expand. Under the feasting, she says, fear's message hails from the canon of cannot, while the call of courage heralds the presence of possibility. Courage does not take a backseat to fear. It forges a new path where fear dare not tread. It forges a new path where fear dare not tread. I wish I could say, in traditional Unity language, we say, just align with your courage, for example. My own experience is that courage arises when I can make space for courage. That if I'm telling myself I need to be courageous, usually my ego's involved there. And I am responding out of some forced response. Some kind of, okay, now I need to be courage, or now I need to be strong, or whatever it is. So, courage indeed forges pathways where fear would never allow. It's incredible what courage allows us to do. It's important, for example, to recognize that there's huge possibility coming out of this whole pandemic that we're experiencing right now. Who even knows all the possibilities? Just us having an empty sanctuary and still broadcasting to all of you is tremendous possibility. But when fear grabs us, it can definitely grab us, especially the way the world has a tendency to test our spiritual maturity, always putting us into deeper and deeper holes where we can say, wait, I'm a spiritual being. I was reading a wonderful article this week where the author, and I'm sorry I should have captured the author, but she said simply, the moment you notice your thoughts falling into fear, do absolutely nothing for just a moment. Just pause. Just take that breath, as Stuart says. Don Miguel says that the remedy for making assumptions, the way to challenge our underlying attachments is to ask questions. I totally agree. But if we are caught in fear, often that will be the last thing we will remember. We will simply go into our knee-jerk response. We'll be making assumptions right and left. We'll be treating those assumptions as if they're right. And so to recognize that we need to pause And we say this time and time again, but that's why Unity's main spiritual practice are prayer and meditation. Because in both of them, we're being asked to pause. We are simply taking the time to quiet no matter what's going on around us, and to open in a spacious way to the possibility of the moment, to the guidance, to our truth, to the knowing that arises in each one of us as knowing is required. And so as we're to live this third agreement, which, by the way, you begin to see begins to support us in being impeccable with our word, not taking things personally, they're all intertwined. It's important that we recognize that our assumptions are driven to a great deal by our attachments, and our unwillingness to get clarity on them is around not wanting that support to be challenged. We want those attachments to be in place so that we can feel comfortable. But the problem is that then the assumptions that we make and the way we get frustrated with people when they don't live up to our assumptions causes others to have to give themselves up to conform to us, which is the last thing we would want to be asked to do for them. In that, we perpetuate this separation. We want to be inviting each and every one of us to live out of the depth of who we are, out of this spiritual nature, our Christ nature. In that, we're guided to what's right for us. We're guided to step out in the ways that are our contribution to make. We are not stripped of our connection with true support. Instead, we feel courageous and empowered to do and be what is ours to do and to be. You can see that from that place, you begin to see the light and the love of everyone around you and everything. The mirror becomes a clear mirror, and you become the light. So I want to invite us into a time of some extended meditation together. And I'd like to just set the tone with you. So I'm going to invite you now to take that nice deep breath, as Sue likes to say, that nice cleansing breath, and let it out. And with it, let out all that you've been holding. And there's been a lot to hold. Your concern for yourself, your concern for others. Acknowledge the disappointments and losses already of connection and activity. And notice how just by taking the time to acknowledge where you're at, what's true for you in this moment, that you begin to settle. Check in with your heart. See if there isn't some space in your heart. Or if you find that there is no space there, take a couple of more deep, comforting breaths into your heart. For you see, you are, through the Christ Spirit, the living, breathing expression of all that there is in your unique way. You are infinitely supported, infinitely guided. Yes, your life here on this planet may not be eternal, but the life of your soul is. And your love, your light, and the resulting guidance and purpose are so much more life-giving than the length of your time here. And so we breathe. We give space for our attachments to become clear to us. We give space this morning for deep healing to happen within us so that we are no longer clinging to relationships, to bring a healing that is no longer possible through outer means. We allow ourselves this morning to lighten the load. To open to the light and the love that we are. And we'll sit together now in the silence for the next several minutes. So I invite you back into this time and this space, allowing yourself to gently come back. Take a nice deep breath to bring yourself firmly back into your body. And when you're ready, open your eyes. And Rachel, are you going to bring us?
I am awake.
Uh-huh.
I went into that was a deep meditation. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
How's everybody doing up there? What an interesting experience. I really could feel all the energy in this room of everybody that's watching online. And it really does touch my heart at what a phenomenal community that we have. So thank you all for being here. And as we normally would, this is the time of the service where we accept and receive love offerings. And in this new technology, just today, so you're probably wondering, where is Sue McQueen? She really wanted to be here today. She has been self-quarantined, not feeling well, and has worked really hard to get our donate button on our Facebook page. And guess what day it finally comes? It finally arrived today. And so on the Facebook donate is a donate button, which is no fees. Everything will go directly to Columbine. So this is a great opportunity to hold the awareness of keeping this community strong and your donations. So let's say our love offering together. God's love has always met and will always meet all my needs. I give freely, I receive abundantly, and I am grateful. And we are grateful for your continued support of Columbine so that we can continue to be here and thrive when all this is done. And it will pass. This too shall pass. So thank you, everybody, for being here. We have our audience that's here, a few people, and everybody who's online. So you're wondering, what are we doing now that we're got things going on like this? And the answer is we don't know. The answer is this is moving day to day. We were in the office on Thursday and had made some decisions, and by Friday, when Sue was on the call with Governor Polis, made some other decisions, and it will continue to change day to day. So we ask people to pay attention to their emails and to check the website. We'll have the website with updated information. And so we're kind of pushing some things off, thinking, well, we'll see. You know, is this a 1 week thing? Is this a 1 month thing? We don't know. So ultimately, again, a reminder that we are from Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And I found the quote that's up on the screen. I am a child of God, and therefore I do not inherit sickness, from Myrtle Fillmore. And just a reminder that this really is a time to practice the prayer and meditation that we teach here in this center, and yet to keep that physical distancing and take care of yourself. So we'll just continue to go on. So a couple of things that we had planned is today was supposed to be the Unity Basics workshop. Clearly not doing that today. So what we're going to do is we're going to push that off to what was going to be the Sacred Service workshop on April 5th. Maybe. We're not sure. So we're going to keep pushing forward and seeing what happens, as well as the choir. So Janice had sent us an email saying we're not going to practice this Thursday, but at this point we're still hoping to have a choir. So you can email Janice at janice@columbineunity.org if you're interested in being in the choir. We may do some virtual rehearsals in preparation for Easter. So we're going to be super creative during this time, and thank you for being part of that experience with us. So if you are interested, keep doing that. We're still planning on doing the potted plants. And so instead of signing up in the lobby, you can email me at Rachel, RACHEL, at columbineunity.org, and we can figure out how to sign you up for one of the beautiful potted plants. We're hoping we'll all be here for Easter. We don't know. So we're going to see. And then as well, unfortunately, the gong bath that was supposed to be this coming Friday We have postponed that as well. We had a date of April 17th set up for the next one, so we are tentatively holding that date. If you bought tickets already, they would transfer over, or you can ask for a refund. So we will continue to hold that in prayer that happens as well. And then as well as the sacred circle of radical forgiveness ceremony, again, we don't know. So we're going to see how things are next week. The staff is going to have a meeting this week and make some bigger decisions about sort of how we're going to move forward with things. And so just stay in contact on the website. But I really wanted to stress that if you need something, if you need prayer support, if you need physical support, if you need something, please reach out to us. So you can contact us by email, rachel@columbineunity.org, sue@columbineunity.org, Rev Scott @columbineunity.org, admin@columbineunity.org. We really encourage you to reach out. I know Julia was saying how she really wants to be able to reach out to people. So reach out to us if you need groceries, if you need someone to pick up a prescription, if you need something, reach out to us and we'll find a way for that to happen for you. So we are a community. We are in here together. We thank you so much for the financial support so that we can stay here. We thank Scott for an amazing message, and we thank you all for being with us here today. And we are grateful that we are together. And that concludes our service, and just be posted on the website, and many blessings. Bye, everybody.